Welcome to SJS Arts. So today I'm gonna talk about albums that helped me cure my genre elitism. So I had this genre elitism for a few years in my early 20s. So I was only listening to metal, jazz, progressive rock and bit of classical music. So basically genres where much of the music is kind of very complex and virtuosic, very technical. And I still love that music, but I learned to also love other types of music that are maybe more simple and different in terms of the kind of instrumentals. Yeah. But one reason that got me interested in kind of widening my palette in music was one of my favorite musical artists, Steven Wilson, and I watched lots of his interviews, and in many of his interviews he talked about how he never understood the tribalism in music, that since he was a kid he always loved both progressive rock and pop music and other types of music, and he never understood the people who were only listening to one music and then put down all types of other music. So those comments really made me think about myself and my elitism, and then I started listening to other forms of music and very quickly fell in love with other types of music. By the way, I'll edit a short clip of Steven Wilson talking here so you kind of get the idea what started my interest in widening my palette.
You know, because I'd grown up in a house where my father was listening to very serious conceptual rock albums like Tubular Bells and Dark Side of the Moon, and my mother on the other hand was listening to the great pop music of the 70s like ABBA and Carpenters and the Bee Gees and all this stuff. So I grew up hearing both of these things and not really having any idea that there was even any difference. You know, to me it was just great music. It's only when you become a teenager that you become aware of these kind of musical snobberies and musical borders that people, tend to put around things. And I still to this day find it very difficult to think in terms of music like that,
yeah.
In borders and like you're allowed to like this but you're not allowed to like this. You can like this but that means you can't like this. I never understood that.
So that was Steven Wilson talking, and of course his albums that he composed and the albums that I love were something that also got me interested in other types of music, because he's an artist who keeps trying new things. So he has done progressive rock, even metal, psychedelic music, electronic music, pop music. And so for example my favorite of his is this one, And Cannot Erase, which is a bit electronic. There is lots of pop elements there, but also kind of art rock and progressive rock elements. So albums like this that kind of combined all those elements were really helpful for me, and I would highly recommend this record. This is one of my favorites of the 2010s. Yeah, and one of my favorites of all time as well. And then there was other music like that where maybe band had roots in some genre that I really loved, but then they changed their style to be something other, and then I had to get used to their new sound. So there's this Norwegian band Leprous that did that they had this again background in progressive metal, but then their last couple of records or 3 records have been more like art rock and art pop. Again, there are some elements still from the past, but it's kind of now sounds like there's lots of Radiohead in there and lots of electronic elements, and the instrumentation is very different and everything. So yeah, so Leprous and Steven Wilson were the stuff that really got me also interested in other types of music. Yeah, and by the way I have to say that as a child and in my teenage years I've had many musical phases with hip hop and pop music. So I had a background with listening to other types of music that I wasn't listening to in my early 20s, but it still got lots of getting used to it when I was starting to listen to kind of pop records and soul records and hip hop records and stuff. Yeah, but let's start with these albums. So we are gonna start with again, one of the artists that really helped me very quickly with getting rid of my elitism, so it's Björk. So this was the first one I listened to debut, and absolutely loved this record from the get-go. It kind of became one of my favorites very quickly, even though I wasn't used to listening to art pop that much. Then I also in the same day I listened to this one, Post. Again, I love both of these records, and these are, by the way, among my favorite album covers of all time. Yeah, Björk to me is a goddess, and she was one of the most integral artists in getting me again broaden my horizons. And again, while we think of Björk as a art pop artist, there is so much more in her music. The instrumentation, the production, everything changes so much from album to album, so I think it's saying that her music is pop music. Kinda, it's almost like putting it down in a way, because there's so much else there as well. Although of course the art label in the beginning kind of says that there is more to it than just pop music. Yeah. But art pop in general was something that I really got into, and now many of these kind of pop sub-genres are some of my favorite genres, like art pop and dream pop. Then with dream pop also shoegaze and other genres like that. Yeah, obviously singer-songwriter music can be quite similar to that as well. Then there's like indie pop and yeah. But anyway, Björk, still one of my favorites, top 3 vocalist and top 10 artist of all time, so yeah. Then the next album, again I've mentioned this many times in my channel, but this was one of the very important ones early on, and it's Heaven or Las Vegas by the Cocteau twins. So this was love at first sight. I just absolutely fell in love with the soundscapes and Elizabeth Fraser's vocals when I listened to this album. And then this kind of went into my regular rotation immediately after I first listened to it. Again, it starts with one of my absolute favorite songs, Cherry Colored Funk. But I think on my first listen and at the beginning, the song that blew me away the most was the title track, Heaven or Las Vegas, which actually might be my favorite song of all time. Still this day, absolutely adore that track. It's very catchy and beautiful. Yeah, this is one of those albums where it's really hard to say what are my favorite songs, because they are all my favorites. I like literally think that every single song is like 5 out of 5 masterpiece. I also again love Ice Blink Luck, Forza Politic, Road, River and Rail. I think it's very underrated. I don't hear people talking about that, but that to me is very beautiful. But I also got into other Cocteau twins records quite quickly, and I fell in love with them as a whole, and I like all of their albums, and I think there are 5 albums in my favorites list, so Heaven or Las Vegas, 4 Calendar Cafe, Treasure. Treasure took me a while to fully appreciate, but now it's probably my second favorite. Then Victoria Island and Bluebell Knoll, yeah. But again, I like the others as well. But Cocteau twins kind of got me into the mood to get into stuff like dream pop and shoegaze. Again, that's not like pure shoegaze, but there's obviously lots of stuff in there that reminds us of shoegaze, like the soundscapes and stuff are very similar. Yeah. And again, I think in my mind that again dream pop and shoegaze kind of walk hand in hand in many ways, because they kind of get me into the same mood, so I don't really care if there are some small differences and stuff. Yeah. Then this next one actually also has Liz Fraser in vocals in a couple of the songs, and this one was really important for me as well. And Steven Wilson actually mentioned this in a podcast where they talked about like top 5 best sounding records of all time, and he had this one on his list. So it's Mezzanine by Massive Attack, one of my top 50 favorites of all time. Love this cover art. This cover art reminds me of the first song of the album, Angel, because the song actually sounds like this cover. I mean, you probably know what I mean if you have heard it. Yeah. And again, we have the famous song Teardrop here that has Liz Fraser's vocals, and yeah, this is just absolutely perfect. And I think I really gravitated towards the kind of darker soundscape in this one because that's something that I like in metal music. Again, metal is still my favorite genre of music, even though I think like dream pop shoegaze are pretty much as big of favorites of mine now. I love those genres as much as I love metal now, yeah. But what a great record. And at the same time, or at the similar time, I also listened to Portishead Dummy. I actually didn't connect with that album that much then, although I later on went back to it and now it's one of my favorites, yeah. Actually it was the second Portishead album that made me love Portishead, but then I went back to again Dummy and fall in love with that as well. Yeah. Yeah, but Massive Attack was the group that got me into trip hop. Yeah. I'm not well versed in trip hop, but I like the genre a lot. Then this next record was very important too, and again showed me a different side of music again. It's Scott 3 by Scott Walker. Again, there is only one song here that I don't like, which is the 30th Century Man. But everything else I love. About it, one of the most beautiful records of all time with those great string sections and that chamber pop stuff. And his vocals are just absolute magic. But the first time I heard about that record was actually from Steven Wilson's friend, Mikael Åkerfeldt, who is the composer and singer-guitarist of Opeth, one of my favorite bands. So he talked about Scott 3 in his Amoeba What's in My Back video, and he said that it's one of his favorite records of all time, and he talked about some personal memories with that record, and he talked about just the magic of the record, so that kind of got me interested in it. And again, in those Amoeba videos, they always play like small clips of those songs, so it got me interested in it. Yeah, but what a masterpiece. These days I might prefer Tilt to Scott 3, but Scott 3 is one of my favorites still, and Thrift I also love, and obviously Scott 4 is good, and Climate of Hunter and stuff, yeah. But then I have a couple more vinyls, but now I'm gonna mention some albums that I don't have on vinyl. So the album that really made me fall in love with soul music was Hot Buttered Soul by Isaac Hayes. I believe again most of the 4 tracks, or maybe even all of them, are cover songs. Again, I love the first song most, the Walk On By, which is just absolute perfection. Yeah. Again, I loved and love Isaac Hayes' voice. I love the soul vibe in his records. Again, the best soul music just has that kind of vibe. Again, that sensual vibe, that very I'm gonna pull you in type of vibe. Yeah. And again, soul music, it was kind of easy for me to connect to it because it has like more varied and more interesting instrumentals, as some again more than some other genres that I was trying to get into. So that was something that I also gravitated towards in soul music, that the instrumentals were good. Yeah. But great record. Then we have Hounds of Love by Kate Bush. So this was also very early on, and Steven Wilson always talks about Kate Bush, so that's how I got interested in it. And again, this was before Stranger Things, so Stranger Things didn't make me love Kate Bush like it did for many people, but for me it was that Steven Wilson mentioned her in some videos, and then I wanted to listen to it, and then I instantly fell in love with it. And Hounds of Love is still my favorite Kate Bush record, but I also love Dreaming a lot, and all the 70s and 80s albums are really good. Yeah. And again, just like with Björk, this was one of the albums that just got me very interested in these art pop records, especially the ones with female vocals. Yeah. beautiful stuff. And this also showed me that pop can be as ambitious and as layered and as interesting as the more complex forms of music like jazz and death metal and stuff like that. Yeah, and what then? Well, then we have one of my top 10 favorite records of all time, although it didn't become top 10 level immediately. But it's Transatlanticism by Deathcap for Cutie. So this, I had heard songs from this like when I was way younger, because I've been watching the TV show The OC many times throughout my life, and they play some Deathcap songs, and also 6 Feet Under has the title track in one of the episodes. And by the way, I love the title track. I've been vibing to it last night and today when I went to the supermarket. I need you so much closer. Like, that's one of the most magical lines in any song for me. And that song makes me so emotional, and it's something that I really shouldn't listen to when I'm depressed. Because okay, when you're depressed, you feel like there's this kind of hole inside you, this emptiness, and then when you hear the vocals and the lyrics in that song, it kind of reminds you even more of those negative emotions and that hole inside you. So it's really not something that I should be listening to when I'm depressed, but it's just such an amazing song. And I love this album. Again, I love Ben's vocals. I love the lyrics here. Again, I don't usually pay that much attention to the lyrics, but as I've listened to this album so much, I've kind of again had to pay attention to them basically, and I've really fallen in love with them. Again, there are often these kind of small intimate stories, and there are these kind of clever observations about life and relationships and stuff that I really like. Yeah. And again, there are just so many of my favorite songs of all time here, like The New Year, The Lack of Color, Passenger Seat, and the title track, like I said, and Tidal and Registration was the one that kind of first really blew me away, and it's still one of my favorites. The glove compartment was inaccurately named. Everybody knows it, so I'm proposing a swift, orderly change. Yeah, that's just such a great way to start the lyrics of the song. Yeah, that's one of my favorite like opening lines ever. Yeah, but yeah, this album I just listen to just all the time, no matter what kind of musical headspace I'm in, because I just love it so much. And again, it's in my top 10 of all time, and I think it will be there for a very long time. Yeah. Again, go listen to that if you like indie music. Yeah. Then we have Souvlaki by Slowdive. So this relates to my love for dream pop and shoegaze. This is one of the big classics of that genre. So it's no surprise that it blew me away quite quickly when I got into it. And it's one of my favorites still to this day, especially the song Machine Gun, which is the second song of the album. That's like top 10, top 20 level song of all time for me. Absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. Yeah. So this just furthered my love for those genres. And so did the next album. Although I mean, guess again, this band or this duo has done dream pop and shoegaze stuff, but there is lots of other stuff in there too. So this is Sweet Trip, You Will Never Know Why. So I also love the album that came before this, Velocity Design and Comfort, and that's a bit more kind of shoegaze dream poppy and glitch pop or glitch hop, and this is like more indie pop. But of course there are flourishes from the earlier stuff too, but I absolutely love this. Love this record. This is just definition of beautiful candy floss indie pop. And again, the duet vocals are just so beautiful. Okay, female vocals and male vocals, both are great. Songs like Milk, Dark and Darkness and Pretending, No Words to Be Found. So beautiful, so beautiful. And when I first discovered Sweet Trip, I was listening to them every day for like a month. Yeah, and I still listen to them quite often. Then we have, this was one that I really didn't expect to love, but now it's like a top 50 of all time record. This is a very famous record. The Smiths, The Queen is Dead. Big classic. Keats and Yeats are on your side. So again, I had this kind of, by the way, I really need to stop saying and again. I've kind of noticed it that when I'm editing and watching my videos before I upload them, I always say and again. By the way, I'm really glad that I'm now saying that I have this flow. I'm sure that some of you have noticed it, that because I need to really acknowledge it when I'm doing these videos, while I'm doing these videos, so maybe I can stop using some of these stupid filler words. Because I absolutely hate filler words, but I often don't notice that I use them all the time until I watch these videos, so I really need to make a conscious effort to eliminate some of these filler words, because it's, again, they just don't make these sentences very appealing, you could say. Yeah. But the Smiths, so I had these stupid kind of is also something that I should eliminate. Not totally, but I should definitely lessen the use of it. But I had preconceptions and kind of weird type of hatred for alternative rock. So I went in with very low expectations when I listened to the Smiths. But then there was just something that really pulled me in very quickly. I had a kind of a love and hate relationship with the vocals at first, but then I grew to love the vocals. But I really love the guitar playing, even though this guitar playing isn't like the guitar playing that I normally gravitate to, which is like very technical, like again, stuff in metal and jazz and things like that. But I just really fell in love with Lamar's guitar playing. I really enjoy his guitar playing again. It's just so much fun. It has a great, happy vibe to it, and it's very danceable as well. So I think he's a great guitar player, so yeah. And when you listen to all of the Smiths albums, they are just so good front to back. They are very good album experiences. And I think the best way to listen to the Smiths is like, again, albums front to back. I mean, that's the best way to listen to music in general, but I say that with the Smiths, it's also a great way to listen to the Smiths. Yeah. And it's really hard for me to pick like favorite Smiths tracks, because when I listen to the Smiths, I want to listen to a whole album. So yeah, they are one of those bands. Yeah. But now after I got into Smiths, I've listened to way more indie rock, alternative rock, jungle pop, all those genres. And while they aren't necessarily my favorite genres of all time, but there are lots of albums that I've really enjoyed from those genres. Yeah. Then last but not least, I'm gonna mention a couple of hip hop records. And like I said in the beginning of the video, that again, I've had a long history with hip hop. At times I've really loved the genre, then other times I've kind of hated it. I don't know why. But now for the last couple of years I've really loved the genre, and if you look at my favorite albums list, there are so many hip hop albums in there now. And I love both the classic stuff and also newer stuff. I love both kind of regular stuff and then more experimental stuff. So the first album here is Madvillainy, which kind of showed me showed me a different side to hip hop that I hadn't heard. Because when I was a kid, I was listening to stuff like Eminem and 50 Cent and NWA and even a bit of Wu-Tang Clan, so those types of things that are very traditional. I mean, 50 Cent is that bling 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 type of stuff, but still like more mainstream and normal type of hip hop. So this showed me that there is a more experimental side to hip hop, which I've found really interesting since I got into this. And now again I like stuff like Death Grips and Danny Brown and JPEGMAFIA. I mean, Danny Brown is actually my favorite rapper, but I got more into him after I had already fallen back in love with hip hop, so I think he wasn't meant for this video, but I'll have to talk about Danny Brown sometime because I absolutely love his music, and there are a couple of his albums in my top 50 that I've been creating. And my favorite album so far this year is the Scaring the House Volume 1 by JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown. But anyway, Madvillainy, again the great MF Doom, and then Madlib, one of the great producers. Yeah, what a mind-blowing album. Again, I really liked the album on my first listen, but then it took me a while to start listening to it more and more. And then later on I really fell in love with it even more. Yeah. And then the other album is, I think, a bit more interesting to talk about here. It's Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. So this is an album that I had, lots of preconceptions about. I thought that I was gonna hate it because I had heard some of the famous Kendrick songs, and I hate many of the like really big Kendrick songs, like Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe. It's weird that I absolutely love this record, but that song is one of my least favorite songs of all time. I mean, it's not from this record, but still. But To Pimp a Butterfly immediately blew me away, and I was so weirded out that how can this artist be so popular with music this good, because I thought that all modern mainstream music, not all mainstream music, but all kind of contemporary mainstream music was pretty much shit. But this kind of changed my way about that, or my view about that, and I'm glad it did. And I still think that most like really mainstream music these days, like Drake and Nicki Minaj and Cardi B and Ed Sheeran and that stuff is shit, but there are still some good mainstream artists too. And I think something being mainstream, the word mainstream can be sometimes hard to define. Of course, something like Radiohead, it doesn't like sound mainstream, but look at how popular Radiohead is, so they are kind of mainstream. So yeah, I mean, that could be an interesting topic to talk about, what is mainstream actually. Yeah. But I was just blown away by Kendrick's lyrics, and then especially the instrumentals here and how much jazz there was in the album. I loved his rapping, the flow he has, and how he has various different styles. Okay, the songs that really blew me away were like How Much a Dollar Cost and Blacker Than Berry. That's my favorite one still to this day. That song just has that kind of old school aggression to it, and I love the lyrics in it. Yeah, but this was very surprising album to me, and it's actually my favorite hip hop record, which is a very cliche thing to say, but that's true, so whatever. But anyway, those were the albums that I wanted to talk about in this video. There are of course more that I could have mentioned, like Loud City Song by Julia Holter. I really need to re-listen to that record, as I think it might be a favorite one. Then there was the Fiona Apple debut record, and there I really love the song Never Is a Promise. I think I didn't talk about that in the films, music and TV shows that made me cry video, but that actually has made me cry. Yeah, I love that song so much. But anyway, let me know if you have had any elitism with music ever. Let me know if there are any genres that you absolutely hate, and let me know the genres of music that you really love. These days I try to listen to all types of genres, and I try to not kind of have too many preconceptions about an album just because the genre, and I'll try to always keep an open mind with music no matter the genre. Yeah. But anyway, thanks for watching, let me know your thoughts. Don't drink all the coke, and sayonara.